are two values, so it's not a dot, it's a coin with 0 and 1. What do you expect? You expect that, of course, if you throw it many times, you have at least the same number of 0 and 1. Otherwise, you would complain that the dice is biased. But you would expect more. If you get 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, it will become to be suspicious. No? You expect that all blocks of 2 digits appears with the same frequency. You have 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, and 0, 0. But also this was for blocks of length 2, but you can ask for more. It will be for any blocks of 3 digits, for instance 0, 1, 1. You expect that all such blocks appear with the same frequency. And actually, if you, because you're more ambitious, you look at all block lengths, not just 0, 1, 2, and 3, you come up with a definition which has been given more than 100 years ago due to Borel, and he called it normal, so don't ask me why, it's historical. And this was defined on numbers, but since you can write numbers in some base 10 for instance, and it is the same definition. So the definition is that some sequence of digits, 0 or 1 or 1 to 9, is called normal if all blocks of the same length occur with the same frequency in that sequence. So for instance, this one is for sure not, because 1, 1 does not occur at all. So it's very far from being normal. And this one is normal, I will tell you. So how is this one? You write 0, 1, 2, 9, then 10, 11, 12, 13, and so on. And it can be proved, it's not that difficult, that this sequence is normal for this definition. And actually, there is a nice story about this example because it's due to Champanon. And what happened is that Hardy, a famous number theorist, was given a course some time ago, and he gave this definition. We will come to that later. We will see that there are plenty of sequences having this property, but he had no examples of such a thing. And at the end of the course, Champanon, who was a student of Hardy in the class, he came and said, I have an example. So if you solve one of our questions, you can come at the end and we can. Okay, so I told you that it was a theorem of Borel. Almost all sequences are normal. But this is the kind of theorem which is frustrating because you know that almost all, but if I ask you, give me one, due to Champanon, you know how to do it, but before Champanon, it was not so easy. Okay? And what is also very nice with this definition of normality is that it is related to some other notion that we study a lot in computer science, automata. So here I have stated the theorem. I will explain you how it works. Not the proof, but the idea. And what it says is that if you take a sequence, it is normal if and only if you cannot compress. You will see what is the definition of compressibility here. If and only if it's not compressible by some finite kind of machine, deterministic, and one-to-one. So what is the idea? The idea of to have a notion of compressibility. You have used Jesse all the time. Many times.
Jesse.
Sorry. And of course, it's kind of machine, maybe not finite state, but it's deterministic. Every time you compress, you get the same result at the end. And the most important is one-to-one. When you compress a file, you're very happy that you can uncompress and get it back. Because otherwise, it's not one-to-one. It's not very interesting to compress a file, because if you cannot inverse and get the file back, it's not so interesting. And also, if it's not one-to-one, you can compress everything. You compress just one bit, but of course, it's not so interesting. So we request that our machine, you can reverse. Okay? So what the machine we look at is the definition. You have one tape. So we look at infinite strings, just because if you look at finite strings, strange things happen. So it's better to look at infinite strings. So you have an input tape where you write some input, and here you have a finite state control, and then you have the output tape where you write the result. Here you can read, and here you can only write. It's finite state machine, so it's not like Turing machine. You cannot at all read what you write. And we will see an example. I think this is the best. So here you have a two-stage machine, and transition have the form. Sorry, I should have that form. So you go to one state to another state, and here this is what you read, and here this is what you write. And this machine, it does something very simple. It compresses all blocks of ones to a single one. So this one is not one-to-one, but for the explanation it will be okay. So I start reading 0. I go to state 0. I remain in state 0 and I write a 0. Then I read a 1 and I write a 1. And then I write a 1. I read a 1 and I write nothing at all. So epsilon is equal to 1. Then I continue, then I read a 0, I come back to state Q0 and write a 0, I read a 0, write a 0, read a 1, write a 1, and then read a 1, write nothing, and so on. Okay, so I think it's clear to everyone. It's like an automaton. I'm sure you have deal with automata. But here, instead of just reading the word and saying at the end, yes or no, I accept or I don't accept. Here, you have a computation, and every time you read something, you can write something or even nothing. And that's what we call a transducer. So it's deterministic, because if you forget about the output, it's a deterministic automaton. Every time you read a 0, it goes to state Q0, and every time you read a 1, it goes to state Q1. Okay? And now we have to define what it means to compress. So you have you have the input, which is an infinite string. You look at the run, because it's deterministic, so if you have one input, you have one run. And you say that it compresses if the length of the output divided by the length of the input is less than 1. Of course, when you look at infinity, this limit may not even exist. So you look at this length to be sure that it exists. And if infinitely many times the output is really smaller than the input, then you say that this ratio that we call the compression ratio is less than 1. You say that the transducer compresses the input. Okay? And then...
but I don't know. In the compression definition, I don't understand the sequence of the A's has the same length.
No, the A's are symbols.
Yes. Here, this is, you read something, so it's always a symbol. And what you write is the V. This is a word. It could be of length 0, nothing, of length 1, or of length 2. Okay. So yes, it's a usual convention of people doing automata that ABCs are letters and VW are finite. So,
definición dice que una secuencia infinita es compresible cuando hay infinitos segmentos iniciales que consiguen ser comprimidos. No necesariamente todos los comprimo, pero cada tanto consigo hacer una nueva compresión, cada tanto una nueva compresión.
Okay, so it was proved already a few years ago, this result of this equivalence between the definition of Borel a long time ago and automata. First, this is quite surprising because the definitions are quite unrelated, but still the theorem was old. And then, what we look at with Veronica is that, for instance, in computer science, it's always an interesting question whether non-determinisms add something. For time complexity, it's well known that it might be, or maybe you don't believe, but it might be different. But here, we ask the same question. If I give you a non-deterministic automaton instead of a deterministic one, could you do more? More meaning compressing at least some word which is known, some sequence which is known. And the idea, the answer, so I wrote yes, the answer is no, you cannot do better. It means yes, the same result does hold, is replacing non-deterministic with deterministic by non-deterministic. With a counter, and the answer is still yes. If I give you a counter, you cannot do more. Actually, we could add more counters, but of course, if you have two counters, it's well known that with two counters you are incomplete, so you could compress, for instance, Champagnon, because it's computable. But if you add two counters with a slight restriction, which makes you not incomplete, then we could still have those, but with one counter it's easier to state. With a machine which we call two-way, it means it can read the input going backwards, forwards and backwards. Then still it was something we have done with Pablo, or from a student of Veronica. This is the same, this is the same. And this one, we don't know. So if you have the answer, please come at the end. Or maybe later. And if you have a stack, it's a machine, and the machine is non-deterministic, then
You can make them guess.
What would you guess? Yes. And then it was the idea of Santiago. If you guess, you get something as a reward. If your guess is right. It can be dangerous. So what is your guess? You lost. Because it's no. But still, there are many alpha horse. Just for hearing, answering, you can get one. So we have, this is one question which is still open. I think this is a difficult one, so...
It's not a PhD topic for us, because
Yes.
we believe it's difficult and we don't have
Yes,
ways
it's really
to solve it.
focused as a question, and so if you enjoy, you can look at it, but I think it's something really difficult that it's not really in our list. But now we come to... yes, that's your turn.
Una idea, se me ocurre que esto va a preservar normalidad, me invento un algoritmo que hace la construcción y después tengo que probar la correctitud de la idea, digamos, que las cosas funcionan si se preserva normalidad. Bien, voy con la siguiente. Tesis de licenciatura. Nosotros éramos para doctorado y ahora vienen dos temas de tesis de licenciatura y vamos a estar en tiempo. Estamos muy contentos que con una idea de Olivier surgió la posibilidad de poder saber, dado un autómata, ustedes dibujan el autómata, y él consiguió dar un algoritmo que analiza el autómata y te dice si ese autómata, cuando lo cargues con una secuencia normal, te va a dar como resultado otra secuencia un algoritmo sencillo que es polinomial. Así que el problema de esta tesis de licenciatura es solamente codificar el algoritmo. Así que hay que entender un poquito para codificar. Por eso es una tesis de licenciatura, porque no es transcribir nada más que un código que está, digamos, algo que está hecho en pseudocódigo. Y entonces, por ejemplo, este sería un autómata para el cual, bueno, ojo, son autómatas que son transductores, leen algo y escriben algo. Y este sería un ejemplo, digamos, también una batería de casos de testeo donde sabemos nosotros si tiene que preservar o no, y entonces, bueno, y la tesis consiste en programarlo y hacer los casos de testeo. Hasta ahora no había ningún algoritmo de decisión para preservación de normalidad. Lo que te está diciendo eso es que tenés un montón de funciones que le pones de entrada una secuencia que es normal y te sale otra secuencia que es normal. Así que tenemos una fábrica de cosas normales. Chamberlain se ganó, digamos, la fama con un ejemplo que hizo, y bueno, más de 100 años después, ahora tenemos muchos ejemplos. Algunos de estos algoritmos empezamos a generar todos los que ustedes quieren. Bueno, y por último, esta otra tesis de licenciatura es muy técnica, pero yo le tengo mucho afecto al problema, y dice así: ¿se acuerdan de las secuencias de Breuil? Solamente uno hace así. Las secuencias de Breuil, algunos sí ya claro, todavía saben. Las secuencias de Breuil son unas secuencias finitas que tienen longitud 2 a la n, entonces tienen la posición A1, A2, supongamos que estamos en base 2, A2 a la n. Entonces fijamos en el qué les pasa, que son estas secuencias codifican adentro todas las posibles palabras de longitud n. ¿Y cómo las codifican adentro? Que las tienen como sus palabras.
No, me conseguí otro lado, sí, pues.
Bueno, igual ya estamos.
Está bien.
¿Cómo las codifican a todas las palabras de longitud n? Los primeros n símbolos dan una, los segundos n símbolos dan otra palabra de longitud n, y así siguiendo hasta la última. O sea, cada uno, ustedes van a decir, uy, che, pero te faltan un poco, porque cuando llegaste hasta acá, te faltan, esa es la palabra, hay 2 a la n palabras de longitud n, y acá empieza ya la última que te interesa. Bueno, se entienden de manera circular, entonces este sería el primer símbolo de la última palabra que nos quedaba por mirar, el segundo, el tercero, hasta el A sub n-1. Y ahí, bueno, resulta que hay muchas de estas palabritas del orden raíz cuadrado de 2 a la n, y esta idea de estas palabras de Breuil que son finitas se puede extender y se van a hacer palabras de Breuil infinitas de una manera que no les conté, pero créanme que es muy interesante que esta construcción se puede seguir repitiendo variando el n. Primero largo con un n y después empiezo a crecer en el n de una manera que no les conté, pero se puede hacer. Y se sabe que en esas secuencias de Breuil infinitas son normales. Es un ejemplo muy simpático de normalidad porque no tiene la pinta como las cosas de Chamberlain, y tiene un significado en teoría de grafos. Son caminos eulerianos en unos grafos que se llaman grafos de Breuil. Entonces tiene muy linda definición. Se conoce una cota de cuán rápida es la convergencia de normalidad, es decir, en qué momento aparecen, por seguro, una cota superiores, todas las posibles combinaciones de longitud 2. Y para cada posición que me paro, puedo tener una cota no muy buena, justamente el problema es una cota mejor, de cuán cerca estoy de terminar de poner todas las palabras de longitud n. Entonces, esa cota es demasiado holgada y entonces nos gustaría hacer una cota más ajustada. Y hay un trabajo que ya lo hace bastante bien para el alfabeto de tamaño 2. Entonces el problema de la tesis de licenciatura es hacerlo para el alfabeto de tamaño 3 y 5. O sea que hay que saber hacer la cuenta bien. Hay que aprender, digamos, a contar eso. Y tenemos la sospecha que si uno aprende a contar eso, va a aprender más cosas. Pero digamos, como tesis de licenciatura está bien acotada. Bueno, y con esto termina la presentación.